Think everyone in America loves Trump. Think again. What if entire states are practically allergic to him? We're talking about places where his rallies get booed, his name sparks protests, and his policies are burned in effigy. Why do millions of Americans despise him with a passion? Is it about race, power, lies, or something even deeper? From liberal strongholds to unexpected battlegrounds, these states didn't just vote blue, they made it personal. You won't believe how far some places have gone just to reject him. Buckle up, because these are the 10 U.S. states that hate Trump, and they're not staying quiet. Number 10, California. It's the state where dreams are made, unless you're Donald Trump. Imagine a place where his every move is met with loud boos, protests, and calls for impeachment. A state that's not just opposing him, it's pushing him out. California is the land of progressives. And guess what? It's also the state with the most vocal resistance to his leadership. From Silicon Valley's tech giants to Hollywood's outspoken stars, Trump hasn't had a warm welcome here. You'd be shocked to hear how much of a divide exists between California's values and his presidency. You might think the Golden State would be divided, but no, it's clear. They're all in on rejecting him. The state hasn't voted red in a presidential election since 1988. And with Trump's policies on immigration, climate change, and healthcare, the divide only deepens. Number 9, New York. Imagine being from the state where Trump's entire legacy began and having your own people constantly turn their back on you. New York is where the man built his empire. Yet they can't stand him now. The moment he stepped into the political arena, it was a full-on battle with the city he once called home. From the skyscrapers of Manhattan to the streets of Brooklyn, Trump's rhetoric doesn't sit well here. But here's a wild twist. You'd think the state that gave birth to him would rally behind him. But guess what? New York has been steadfast in rejecting his politics. In fact, it's one of the most overwhelmingly blue states in the Union. With every scandal and tweet, his image in New York only worsens. And with Trump's attack on New York's sanctuary city policies, it's no wonder he's been booed at his own events. Don't forget to subscribe. We're about to hit states you won't believe are on this list. Number 8, Massachusetts. What happens when a state known for its progressive values and intellectual pride rejects the very person who's supposed to lead the nation? You're about to find out. Massachusetts has made it crystal clear Donald Trump is not welcome here. You'd be shocked at how hard they've pushed back against his policies. The state, historically a stronghold of Democratic power, voted overwhelmingly for Joe Biden in 2020, and the numbers were staggering. In fact, Massachusetts is one of the most liberal states in the country, with the majority of its voters supporting policies that directly clash with Trump's agenda. But here's the kicker. Despite Trump's ties to business, Massachusetts, home to some of the country's biggest universities and research institutions, just can't get behind him. You might wonder, how does the state that gave the world Harvard and MIT feel about Trump's attacks on science and education? Let's just say they don't appreciate it. From the start, Trump's policies on healthcare, climate change, and his constant undermining of scientific expertise put him at odds with Massachusetts. But guess what? It wasn't just the coastal elites or university professors who opposed him. Regular folks in towns across the state felt it too. Massachusetts voters didn't just reject Trump's policies, they flat out rejected his divisive rhetoric. From tax cuts for the wealthy to rolling back environmental protections, the Bay State's residents were furious. And here's something that might surprise you. Massachusetts was one of the first states to introduce its own healthcare system, the same one Trump tried to dismantle on a national scale. You'd think a businessman like Trump would be celebrated in a state full of Ivy League grads and entrepreneurs. But instead, it was clear his vision for America didn't match what they wanted for the future. What does this mean for Trump's support? Well, if Massachusetts is any indication, it's safe to say his approval rating here will likely stay low for the foreseeable future. Want to hear more about a state that has its own take on Trump's agenda? Stick around. We're moving on to Vermont. Number 7, Vermont. How does a state that prides itself on independence and liberal ideals deal with a president who's everything they stand against? Vermont has been at the forefront of resistance against Donald Trump. You'd be shocked to know that even though Vermont is small, it packs a punch when it comes to politics. The state, with its population just shy of 700,000, has had a turbulent relationship with Trump's presidency, and the results speak for themselves. Bernie Sanders, the state's most famous senator, became the face of the resistance to Trump, and his supporters have been loud in their opposition. But it's not just Sanders. Vermont has made its disdain for Trump clear through consistent voting patterns and public sentiment. In the 2020 election, Vermont went overwhelmingly blue with a 66 vote for Biden. And in 2016, Vermont also chose Hillary Clinton by a large margin. You might wonder why a state that's often seen as rural and full of farmers would reject Trump so strongly. But here's the shocking part. Vermont isn't just a blue state. It's a state with strong principles. The state's rejection of Trump is rooted in its dedication to progressive values, particularly its commitment to social justice, health care for all, and environmental protection. And guess what? Trump's attacks on those very issues didn't sit well with Vermonters. When it came to his stance on climate change, health care reform, and even his controversial rhetoric on immigration, the state had no tolerance for it. But here's a little twist. Vermont has a reputation for independence, and its residents take that seriously. It's not about following the crowd. Vermonters want a president who shares their values, and Trump simply wasn't the man for the job. You'd think a small, predominantly white state would lean conservative, but instead, Vermont's progressive streak means that anything resembling Trump's divisive politics gets a swift rejection. Vermont's political landscape is clear. If you're not in line with their core values, you won't get their vote. Trump didn't just lose the state in 2020, he lost the heart of Vermont. Now that you've seen Vermont's take on Trump's presidency, you might wonder if any other state shares their level of resistance. Well, let's move on to a state that's also fed up. And that's where we're headed next. Don't forget to subscribe because you won't believe what happens next in Illinois. Number 6, Illinois. What do you get when you combine a huge, diverse population, a powerful Democratic stronghold, and a total rejection of Trump's policies? Illinois, you'd be shocked to know just how firmly this state stands against him. From the bustling streets of Chicago to the quiet corners of the state, Trump's presidency was met with constant pushback. And guess what? The state's political landscape hasn't budged. In 2020, Illinois overwhelmingly supported Joe Biden with a margin of over 17, making it clear that Trump's policies just didn't resonate here. The state's urban centers, with their mix of blue-collar workers, college students, and professionals, saw massive opposition to Trump's immigration stance, handling of the economy, and environmental policies. But it's not just the cities that rejected Trump. Even in the more conservative rural areas, people began to turn on him as his tenure wore on. You'd be surprised to learn that despite the state's historical leanings toward the Democratic Party, Illinois once had a more mixed political makeup. However, Trump's rhetoric and actions pushed it further left, and even many Republicans in Illinois began distancing themselves from his influence. What's even more jaw-dropping, Illinois is home to some of the country's most influential unions. And guess what? Trump's antagonistic approach toward labor rights and his attempts to strip union protections only made Illinois voters more furious. The state's workers, many of whom were employed in industries that Trump promised to revive, felt betrayed. For them, Trump's empty promises to bring back manufacturing jobs didn't cut it. But here's where it gets really interesting. Chicago, Illinois' largest city, is often seen as the epicenter of anti-Trump sentiment. From protests to political rallies, the city's progressive vibe made it a symbol of resistance. And with Trump's policies targeting cities like Chicago on issues ranging from crime to immigration, it was clear that Illinois wouldn't tolerate his divisive brand of leadership. You won't find many Trump supporters in Illinois, and you'd be hard-pressed to find any area of the state where his policies weren't deeply opposed. Illinois' rejection of Trump wasn't just political, it was personal. People here weren't just upset, they were outraged. Now that you've seen Illinois, wait until you hear about the next state on the list. You're in for some serious surprises. Number 5, Oregon. Picture a state known for its natural beauty, progressive politics, and commitment to sustainability. Now imagine a president whose policies go against everything that state stands for. Welcome to Oregon. You'd be shocked at how staunchly the state rejected Trump. Oregon, with its lush forests, progressive cities, and strong environmental values, has been a vocal opponent of his administration since day one. Trump's disregard for climate change science and his policies on public lands sparked intense resistance here. But guess what? It's not just the state's environmental stance that fueled this opposition. Oregon is also home to a growing urban population that overwhelmingly supports progressive policies. From Portland to Eugene, the state's cities are full of people who reject Trump's views on healthcare, immigration, and social justice. In fact, in 2020, Oregon voted for Joe Biden with a wide margin, further solidifying its stance against Trump. You might think Oregon, with its liberal reputation, would be a safe haven for Democrats. But it's more than just a political lean, it's a cultural rebellion against everything Trump represents. The state's population is young, educated, and highly engaged, and they've made it clear they don't support a president who undermines the very issues they care about. What's even more surprising is how the state's stance on issues like homelessness, gun control, and police reform became rallying points for anti-Trump sentiment. You'd be shocked to hear that Oregon was at the center of massive protests against Trump's handling of racial justice issues. When Trump sent federal agents to Portland in 2020 to suppress protests, it only fueled the fire. The city's residents, along with people across the state, didn't just disagree with Trump. They actively opposed his presence and influence. But here's the kicker. Oregon's resistance to Trump didn't just take place in the cities. Even in smaller, more rural areas, the political shift was noticeable. Oregon's communities, once divided, started to see a growing wave of anti-Trump sentiment as his policies on trade, environmental regulation, and federal land management came into play. Now you're probably wondering, which state is next? Well, wait until you hear about Washington. You won't believe how it responded to Trump's presidency. Number 4, Washington. What happens when a state on the West Coast, known for its tech boom, environmental activism, and progressive policies, decides it's had enough? Washington has made it clear that it doesn't stand for Trump's policies or his leadership. You'd be shocked to learn just how much the state pushed back during his presidency. From Seattle to Spokane, the state rejected everything Trump stood for. In 2020, Washington gave a resounding 58 of its votes to Joe Biden, a clear message that Trump's divisive rhetoric and policies were unwelcome. But guess what? It wasn't just about who they voted for. Washington's major cities are home to millions of tech workers, scientists, and environmentalists who found Trump's policies deeply troubling. His rollback of environmental regulations and his dismissal of climate change science hit a state that prides itself on its green economy hard. You'd be shocked at the impact of this on Washington's residents. The state has been a leader in renewable energy, and Trump's disregard for environmental protection was met with outrage. And here's a surprising fact. Washington is home to some of the country's biggest corporations like Amazon and Microsoft. And guess what? Trump's rhetoric on immigration and the tech industry itself sparked deep divisions with these companies. Especially when Trump took a hard stance on issues like FAO visas, companies like Amazon didn't just stay silent. They pushed back. This is a state where innovation is king, and Trump's policies on tech and business didn't sit well with the people who drive it forward. You'd be shocked to know how much resistance came from ordinary Washingtonians, too. The state's political activism runs deep, and from climate change to healthcare to immigrant rights, Trump's administration didn't align with the core values of this state. But here's the most shocking part. Washington's rejection of Trump wasn't just about policy. It was personal. The people here felt disrespected by the president's approach to issues like social justice and racial equality, with protests in Seattle, and the growing divide over Trump's response to civil rights movements. Washington's residents were on the front lines of resisting his leadership. After everything you've heard, you might wonder which state will be next in our list. Well, Hawaii has its own unique take on Trump's presidency. Stick around, it's one you won't want to miss. Number 3, Hawaii. What does it look like when a state with deep ties to multiculturalism, history, and environmental stewardship rejects Trump? Hawaii stands out as a state that couldn't be more different from the former president's ideals. You'd be shocked by just how strongly Hawaii opposed Trump's policies throughout his presidency. It's the state, which relies on tourism, agriculture, and a diverse population, was quick to call out Trump on a number of issues. Guess what? Hawaii's rejection of Trump began even before the 2020 election. The Aloha state has long been a Democratic stronghold, and it's no surprise that it turned its back on Trump's rhetoric. But here's the kicker. Hawaii's strong anti-Trump sentiment didn't just come from political elites or activists. It was widespread, cutting across demographic lines. You'd be shocked to learn that even the local business owners, particularly those in the tourism sector, found Trump's policies harmful to Hawaii's economic future. The state relies heavily on tourism, and Trump's trade wars, visa restrictions, and alienation of international markets sent shockwaves through the industry. But guess what? It wasn't just economic policies that made Hawaii push back. Hawaii, with its beautiful landscapes and diverse ecosystems, has a unique relationship with the environment. Trump's rollback of environmental protections didn't sit well with a state that has spent years battling climate change effects like rising sea levels and coastal erosion. Hawaii was already dealing with environmental stress, and Trump's policies only worsened. Residents saw his disregard for climate science as a direct threat to their future. Here's something that might surprise you. Hawaii is also a deeply military-connected state. The U.S. military has a significant presence here. And while Hawaii generally supports defense, Trump's erratic foreign policies left many military families uneasy. With his unpredictable stance on global alliances and military interventions, Trump's policies were met with uncertainty in the state's tight-knit military community. But the most shocking part of Hawaii's rejection of Trump is rooted in the aloha spirit itself. Hawaii is a place that celebrates inclusivity and unity. And Trump's divisive approach to issues like race, immigration, and the economy just didn't. The people of Hawaii rejected a president who couldn't seem to unite the country, and instead chose to stand up for the values of love, respect, and community. Now, you might be wondering, what comes next? Well, wait until you hear about Maryland. It's a state with a rich history and even more shocking reactions to Trump's leadership. Don't forget to subscribe. We've got more surprising facts that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Number 2, Maryland. What happens when a state with a rich history of political activism decides it's had enough of Trump's policies? Maryland made it clear that it wasn't having any of Trump's rhetoric or leadership. From the bustling streets of Baltimore to the affluent suburbs of D.C., Maryland's residents overwhelmingly rejected Trump's agenda. In 2020, the state voted for Joe Biden with a whopping 65% of the vote. But guess what? Maryland's stance wasn't just about politics. It was about values. The state is home to a large government workforce, and Trump's attacks on federal employees didn't sit well. From health care to climate change, Marylanders were furious over Trump's policies. You'd be shocked to learn how quickly the state rallied against him, making Maryland one of the strongest Trump-rejecting states on the East Coast. Number 1, Connecticut. What do you get when you combine a highly educated population and a deep sense of social responsibility? Connecticut is the perfect example of a state that took a stand against Trump's presidency. With a strong Democratic base, the state was quick to oppose Trump's divisive tactics. In 2020, Connecticut gave Biden a 20-point lead over Trump. But guess what? Connecticut's opposition to Trump wasn't just about party lines. The state's focus on education, healthcare, and the environment made Trump's policies a tough sell. You'd be shocked at how the state's residents reacted to his attacks on science and healthcare. Connecticut's strong sense of community led to widespread rejection of Trump's leadership, making it one of the more anti-Trump states in New England. And there you have it, 10 states that just couldn't stand Trump. From economic concerns to values-based rejections, these states made their voices heard loud and clear. You'd be shocked by how each one stood up for what they believe in, despite Trump's influence. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video to help us keep bringing you more shocking content like this. We've got even more insights coming your way. Stay tuned.